Hello and welcome to Maltbox, the non-chill filtered whisky blog. I'm Andy and this is Whisky Review number 85. And what I have for you today is a Speyside single malt Scotch whisky from the Benriach distillery. And it comes in the form of this. The Benriach 10-year-old Curiositas. Try saying that after a few of these, you will go quite off the rails, I can assure you. Now the Curiositas is a completely different bottling to their standard 10-year-old. Curiositas is a peated Speyside whisky. It is bottled at 46%. It is also natural colour. It is also non-chill filtered. The Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity. It's not 40%, it's not chill filtered, and it's not coloured. They do a lot of things right at Benriach. They really do, and very similar to Benriach and that general portfolio of distilleries. They are a group, so Benriach, Benriach and Glenglassaugh, which again I'm probably pronouncing wrong, so I do apologise, which was previously under Billy Walker's tenure, and now it's obviously Brown Foreman, aka Jack Daniels, you know, but such is life. They've always done things very, very well. They've always presented whiskies with relatively straightforward craft presentation, no nonsense, 46%, non-chill filtration, and no added colour, which appeals to us whisky geeks, doesn't it? Really, I mean, I think realistically it will arguably appeal to a wider audience because there is a differential there in terms of flavour profile, palate, sort of viscosity. And it's just the right way to do things. It's the right way to do things, isn't it? You know what I mean? Anyway, moving on from that little rant. So, again, natural colour. Got a nice sort of light golden appearance there. Some tears very, very slowly forming down the glass. My face looks well funky in that glass, doesn't it? Sorry, right, there you go. So, very, very, very slow tears. They're not even going down the glass yet. Now, that is thick. So, this bottling is made up of whisky that went through a triple maturation process, in the sense that it was actually a mixture of spirit matured in ex-bourbon casks, okay, ex-bourbon, ex-rum, and also recharred virgin oak casks. Well, toasted virgin oak casks, so virgin oak. I don't know why I said recharred, I do apologise. You'll get used to the little mistakes and the little quirks. It's, you know, it's what appeals about whisky, isn't it? We're always on a journey. So it's got quite a nice cask makeup there, hasn't it? Bourbon, virgin, and rum. I'm not too sure which rum distillery the rum comes from, or which area of the Caribbean or the world or South America, you know, it comes from. But rum casks, very, very interesting indeed. Not something you see too often. I mean, obviously, in the main marketplace, I suppose, you've got the Balvenie 14-year-old Caribbean cask, which is something I've not had for years, and I really need to get another bottle of. I've not had that for, what, a good 7 or 8 years now? Long time. Anyway, enough for me. You don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about what I'm saying. So let's move on to the whiskey. So, on the nose, okay. Predictably, there is a lot of wood and oak influence there. You've got these different cask makeups vying for position, and at the same time it works really, really well. It's very, very engaging. The smoke is there. It's not particularly heavily peated. It's not as heavily peated as, say, one of their other older releases, the Set 10 Decent, but it is still very noticeably peated. It's very smoky. Think coal smoke. You've got lemon in there as well. A little bit more citrus, maybe orange this time. Not quite as intense, not quite as nippy as lemon. Not quite as sour. And I would go back to that coal smoke. It really is coal smoke for me. There's also a very sweet quality to this. Think caramel. Think desiccated coconut, which could well come down to the rum cask, to be fair. You've then got the kind of hallmark ex-bourbon-esque notes. So we've got vanilla. We've got it's like creaminess, vanilla custard, you could say. There's a little bit of spice in there. Something quite vegetal. Something quite vegetal indeed. I'm thinking damp leaves, maybe, on some wet soil. Sounds a bit specific, but I've just been doing it today in the wet weather. Gone back into my garden after the chaos that has been this northwestern England winter. Very bleak. Maybe a little bit of cinnamon in there now as well. Turmeric. If you can believe it, there's turmeric in there for me. And then it comes back round to a nice sweetness again, with maybe even a little bit of coriander. Maybe a tiny little bit of coriander. Very interesting nose. It is very, very interesting. I've got to give it to it. Very interesting little nose on this. Now, I mentioned at the start of the review that this is a peated whiskey. Now, some of you might think, peated, Speyside, what, why, who, when, what? Now, I'm not going to lecture, but because I'm in no position to, let's face it. Now, historically, Speyside whiskies were peated, because back in the day, when barley was malted and dried out, what did they have to burn in Scotland and the wider world? They had lots of peat, ergo, peated whiskey. Now, obviously, you moved on down the generations, the decades, etc. And you've got companies that will malt barley for a lot of distilleries off-site, maltings, as they are more well known, and then shipped over. And that is basically done in a warm room with either underfloor heating or warm air being passed across whilst it's all being turned. However, going back to what I was saying, historically, Speyside, very much like Islay is now, was a smoke-heavy whiskey area, because that's what they had to burn to dry out the barley. So Benriach, same with Benriach really. If you've had Benriach is also a peated Speyside whiskey, what is sort of defined and sold as a traditional Speyside profile. Now, I suppose that goes back to what you define as a traditional Speyside profile. If you go all the way back to that sort of period, yeah, it's traditional Speyside profile. But is that the profile that's been carved out by a lot of distilleries in Speyside, such as your Sherry Monsters, your Glenfarclasses and people like that? Hello, buddy, you alright? Wow, you're soaking, thanks for that. Must be raining again. So, it's quite interesting that Benriach are actually taking this approach with this bottling, and with others, to be fair. This is not their only peated bottling. And Benriach, as a distillery, do a lot of different things with their whiskey. They triple distill, they do heavily peated runs, they do lightly peated runs, they do non-peated runs. They're doing things very, very differently, and they're doing it consistently and doing it all the time. They've got, if you look at their special releases and things like that, and their single cask releases, you'll find one that's like 26-year-old heavily peated, then you'll find one that's 17-year-old triple distilled, unpeated. Hi mate, thanks for that. That is excellent. Just making my knees wet, tail in the face. Thanks for that. Oh God, it's like the Bimber review all over again, isn't it? Go on, off you pop. So excellent. Anyway, moving on. Onto the palate. Should we go onto the palate now that this guy's back? This is Winston. If you've not watched any of the previous reviews with him in, I strongly suggest the Dalmore review, where he does a bit of gymnastics, as well as the Bimber review, where this is a bit deja vu, to be honest. On the palate. Oh, what a mouthfeel. Oily, thick, gloopy, lovely viscosity. It's good, isn't it? It's so oily. For such a young whiskey, it's bottled at 40%, but again, that non-chill filtration really helps out in the tongue and tooth coating department. I'm really struggling to get my words out tonight, so I do apologise. Now, that vegetal note is really, really at the forefront for me. It really is. Like mossy, brackish, but not unpleasant. And when you say brackish, it sounds horrendous, but it's actually very, very nice, because alongside that, you've got that lovely vanilla creaminess from the ex-bourbon and from the nose that I mentioned before. There's a very, very strong honey note for me as well. All the while, you've got this very luxurious and yet soft smoke going on in the background. It's all intertwined together, it all works with each other, it all plays off one another. It's very much a journey. It really is. This thing does change direction quite a few times. This is if you're going somewhere new on a very long journey, your sat-nav's broken and you've forgotten your AA road atlas that your dad gave you 10 years ago. You don't know where you're going, do you? You don't know where you're going next. So, going back to the nose very quickly, pretty similar to what I mentioned before. The only other thing I might be able to pick up there is wine gums. So I think it's Bassett's, is it? Wine gums over here in the UK. I'm sure you get them abroad as well, but very traditional, sort of like jelly-ish sweet. Honestly, that mouthfeel is really, really good. Maybe some crisp green apple, sweet barley notes, and again that smokiness. What are you playing at, you? Sweet barley, and you've got that lovely smoke, a little bit citrus, that vanilla. The finish, relatively long, relatively warming, but sweet. It actually gets a little bit sweeter, starts turning a little bit bitter. I'm getting like a bit of toffee. That smoke is there again, drying, and quite a bit of oak influence in there as well. What I've not mentioned is this actually retails between £35 and £40. Now I picked this up last year, sort of mid last year, for about the 35 quid mark. Generally speaking, it's about 38, 39, but you can pick it up maybe a little bit less occasionally. The official RRP I think is 40. In terms of score, I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. I think it's a great, great little malt whisky. Very affordable, accessible at all the usual suspects such as Master of Malt, Whisky Exchange. I think you can get it on Amazon. And it's another example of Benriach doing things the right way. No chill filtration, no added colouring, no nonsense, and bottled at a good strength. A very, very good whisky indeed for the price. Thanks for watching. See you soon.